Conversations with Leaders for Aspiring Leaders. I am Brian Lass, and truly our guest today needs no introduction. I'm all too honored to have him here today. Chris Lewis, of course, is the former commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, public safety analyst on CTV News, and as well the author of Never Stop on a Hill, Transferable Lessons in Leadership from the Eyes of a Police Chief. And I tell you what, to me, you'll always be commissioner. So Commissioner, I thank you so very kindly for being here today.
My pleasure, Brian.
Excellent. So I tell you what, I just want to jump into it and really take advantage of not even every minute, but every second I have with you here. And I know everyone watching feels the same sentiment. So, I've heard you say in so many interviews that you've done that you've always been studying leadership. You've been studying leadership all your life. So, certainly you've held every successive role in a police service. So I'm wondering if there is, when you look back, being we're here talking about the subject of leadership, I'm wondering if there's perhaps one distinct moment that you can say to yourself, that you had this realization that, certainly leadership was this entity unto itself, an academic, maybe even applied skill. And admittedly, this is a bit of a two-pronged question. And certainly upon this realization, did you come to have a further realization that leadership would perhaps be the main caveat as you tried to pursue in your career?
Well, yeah, and it's a question that I've spoken about many, many times. I talked a little bit about it in my book, but in my second detachment as an OPP constable in Northern Ontario, it was about 1981. I was in a little place called Smooth Rock Falls, and we had a corporal detachment commander back then that was the total antithesis of leadership. He couldn't lead a pack of Boy Scouts to a campfire. That was the reality. I won't name him because he's deceased, and I've always promised myself I wouldn't speak poorly of the dead, but he was a terrible leader, just an awful human being. And a small detachment, all hardworking young officers, and he just destroyed morale. And one day, a staff sergeant from a neighboring detachment stopped in who I'd never met. And as we're talking, he said to me, the corporal's out of the office. He said, "How are you getting along with?" And he moved his head towards the corporal's office. And I said, "He's a useless goof." And the staff sergeant just stopped in his tracks. And I thought, oh, this isn't going well. I'm a 3-year officer now. My second posting, I'm in trouble. And he stopped and he said, "He's not useless." He said, "He's a perfectly good, bad example. Watch everything that moron does and don't ever do any of it, and you'll be successful in this organization." And that was really like, I've always been fascinated by leadership. I'm a people person, I'm a people watcher. And so it was when it became crystal clear that I can even learn from this guy that what not to do. So like he said, watch everything he does and don't ever do it to anybody. And I really did focus on that from that point on, not because I wanted to be promoted, just because that's who I am. I just watch people and I thought, he'd say this to somebody or he'd embarrass another officer in the detachment by yelling and screaming at him and that sort of thing nonstop. And I thought, well, I would never do that to anybody. And I even challenged him on it a couple of times. And
gotcha.
Quick story, if I could. He come in one morning and he just kind of grunts. I'm the night shift, one officer. He goes into his office, doesn't say as much as good morning. And I said, "Can't you even say good morning?" He said, "What do you want me to do? Kiss your rear?" I said, "No, but good morning would be really nice. That's quite appropriate. It's the two of us in the building, But anyway, so that's what I really was a huge lesson for me that I carried through the rest of my career. And when I decided to kind of, go on to leadership roles, was just happenstance. It was never really intended. Everybody's writing the corporal's exam. I thought, what the heck, I'll write it too. And the rest is kind of history, and on I went.
Gotcha. And it sounds like this individual you speak of that didn't even necessarily employ, an autocratic, my way or the highway style, but rather just maybe no style. He just sort of was there, showed up and checked out. And unfortunately, that was it. So now that being said, I mean, here we are, present date, and hopefully we've come leaps and bounds. I'm certain there've been many, many books on the realm of leadership, obviously one of yours included. But that brings up an interesting point here. I mean, certainly us as human beings, we're social creatures. We obviously respond and react to the environment around us, and maybe even that story you shared obviously preface it. So I'm wondering, as far as these entities we refer to as leaders, and maybe it's anyone who throws a set of chevrons on their shoulder or above, not to preclude from leading from the front, but I'm wondering, these perceivable leadership roles, how much of a responsibility do our leaders have for creating an environment that's conducive to good morale, motivation, growth? Employees wanting to wake up and come to work in the morning. And even maybe to preface this a little bit more, I'm sure we've all heard the sentiment that, a group of people, a group of friends sitting around, one person at the table says, oh, you know what, I love my job, and the other three says, oh, you're so lucky. I mean, is there something to really be taken back by that? Like, something really wrong with that, if you will.
Well, for sure. And it's the leader's sole role is to inspire those around them to do and be their best, all for the betterment of the community they serve and for the individuals that are being led, and not for the leader's own, rep or resume. It's all about inspiring people, encouraging them, supporting them, getting them through the tough times as well as the good. And that's what leadership is. So just because you have stripes or chevrons somewhere in your uniform and a bunch of scrambled egg on the peak of your hat, that doesn't mean that means you have a position. And unfortunately, in policing and many other professions, being a leader and getting promoted haven't always been the same thing. Many people have been promoted that couldn't lead the pack of Boy Scouts to the campfire. And I mean that in all sincerity. They have no leadership ability, but they pass an exam, pass an interview somehow or another, told some lies about what they had done in their career or didn't, and subsequently they're promoted and they're destroying morale and leaving a path to destruction across the organization. And so when 3 or 4 people are sitting around and one person loves their job, they're probably working for a good leadership team. And those that are unhappy are probably not. Because the good leaders can get people even through the worst of times, budget cuts, in policing, all the protests, the protracted protests, the war on police, the 24-hour news cycle, and all social media and all of that, which puts a lot of pressure on police officers. Good leaders will get them through that. And the bad leaders won't, because the bad leaders are running for cover and leaving people to survive on their own because they don't care about anybody but themselves. And that's something I just didn't want to be. Did I screw up along the way? Did I say the wrong thing at times? Did I maybe was too hard on somebody and not hard enough on someone else? Without a doubt, I did all those things and more. But my ultimate goal, what I was trying to do, was to support and encourage, mentor, coach, and be there for people, help them be better, and let's deliver great service to the public and keep them safe. That was really what I tried to be about. And sometimes I succeeded and many times I didn't.
Well, I said I would say many would concur. You did a fantastic job that, and certainly I'll leave that sentiment behind. But it's interesting you mentioned the idea of inspiration. I recently came across a quote. It was something to the effect of, how do you motivate the unmotivated? It's simple. You inspire them. So would you say for Chris Lewis that leadership has, maybe very much resentment with the idea of just trying to inspire people, or would you say it's a little bit more than that?
Well, it's all of that. I mean, leadership doesn't just come from a single act or getting people through a tough situation. It's day-to-day interaction. It's building trust. It's your decision-making in an honest and fair and transparent way. It's communicating. It's getting the input of others. All of that building self-confidence and a feeling of being appreciated and understood and being part of a team, and bringing all that out in people by that communicative, supportive leadership style, knowing their names, knowing who they are, what they're about, knowing what their career goals are, where they've been, what their family situations are. Not easy to do in big organizations, but if you're not doing it, you're not making them feel connected to their leader. That individual, he'll kick me in the rear if I need a kick in the rear, but he'll do it in a way that's for me, not to make himself look good. And he keeps me apprised. He asks me what I think sometimes, or she actually involves us in decision making when she can. Those are the leaders, and they're really helping to build that sense of engagement, involvement, and inspire them to be their best. Not easy to do, but it should be what we all do in life, not just as leaders, but as people. Support those around us and communicate well and treat people fairly. Like that's really, those are lessons in life as much as they're lessons in leadership, but very critical when it comes to being a leader.
No, absolutely. And I tell you what, you talked a little bit in there about the idea of perhaps, leaders or perceivable leaders being a bit self-serving, thinking about themselves. And there's an excellent quote, admittedly, that resonated with me a lot from your book. So maybe where I'll start here, the book Never Stop on a Hill, as I understand it, the title itself, I believe it's a story having to do with you and your daughter. Do I understand correctly? Maybe tell us a little bit where that title sort of comes from.
Yeah, my daughter Melissa, who's going to be 39 in a month or so, she's a captain in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And she's always been an A-type, always a high achiever, just amazing. At 4 years old, she wanted to run with me when I went running. just what I needed, a 4-year-old going out for a 4 or 5 or 6K run with me. But eventually we started off, she'd come with me a little bit, and, then I'd take her home and I'd go and do the run by myself. And as she got older, she became an exceptional athlete and could outrun me like there's no tomorrow. But at one point we were running and we came to a little incline, more than a hill, I suppose. And she said, "Let's walk up the hill, Daddy." I said, "Don't let the hill beat you, honey. We can beat that hill. Let's get to the top of the hill. Okay, you're with me?" And okay, I'll try. And we get to the top of the hill. And now we're at the top. We're going down the hill. It's easy. Next hill, we can do it again. And we just got through it. And this became a thing with her and I about never stopping on a hill. And we talk about it to this day. She has it tattooed in her foot. Never
Wow.
stop on a hill. And she helped me edit the book. And so it's been something that I always thought life is a series of hills and valleys. Leadership is certainly a series of, sometimes they're cliffs, not just hills, but huge challenges. And you can't stop when you get to one. You got to get people through it. And that's one of the big parts of leadership.
For sure. Now, that being said, and even perhaps while we're sort of on that poignant topic, and before I even get to this quote that I want to preface here, we talk about the idea of hitting hills. Do you feel that, people in these, again, I'll use the terminology, perceivable leadership roles, do you feel for the most part that when these such people hit a hill, do you feel that they're endeavoring to stay stagnant in the way that they will try to excel is to keep people under them? Or do you think they're doing a good job for the most part and always wanted to continue with, a personal, professional growth? What's your take on that?
Well, it's really a kind of a function of just happenstance. Some are good at it, some aren't. Some don't care about anybody but themselves.
Gotcha.
Leaders in all professions out there that really, they're in it for themselves. They talk in terms of me, my, I. They never talk about the people that are actually out doing the job, except to say, well, I thought I would assign the best people to that job. Well, no, you assign people, the comm center called and sent to it. You had nothing to do with it, so-called leader. But so I think sometimes it's more good luck than good management. I don't really think the promotional processes have helped us identify, and I'm critical of myself in this regard too, because I tried to make positive changes and never really got it to where I wanted it to be in terms of the promotional processes. But we weren't focusing on leadership enough, picking the people that can lead change, inspire people, and help people get through the tough times. And when they go bad, put their hand up and say, "I'm the boss, I screwed up, blame me." And when they go good, say, "I didn't do anything, they did it." And I'm proud to be a part of the team. And we haven't done enough to identify the people that have that skill. Luckily, we have, but sometimes just by good luck.
No, do you feel it's a learned skill? Do you feel it's something maybe that the powers that be can step in and create an environment that be conducive to maybe this person, sort of acting at their natural best? Like, I guess my question is, how much do you think the environment that leaders create have to do with that?
It's a huge thing. I really think lawyers are made. They're not born that way. You are born often with skills that make you a better leader. Just maybe not shy, more comfortable speaking to strangers and people, and which kind of comes with police work.
Like myself and you right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the first time other than by email. And so some people are kind of natural communicators. That doesn't mean they're going to inspire better, but they at least have some of those, they're born with some of those intrinsic skills that help them be a better leader. But you still learn by trying and failing and watching others and learning from them. It's a continuum that never ends. And whether you're, Rick Hillier, the former chief of defense staff, whether you're Brian or you're Chris or Julian Fantino, you're always learning because you're always failing. You're always seeing what works and what doesn't. You're learning from others around you, focusing on what's going to make these folks the best. That's a mindset that not everybody has, particularly if they work for bad leaders because they haven't seen anybody to model themselves after. But if they work for good leaders, they really want to try their best and learn, have some basic skills, strive to make those skills better if they're a little shy or not good at confronting people and things like that, then I think you can really fine tune those skills to be the very best that you can be. And by inspiring others to be the best they can be, it inspires you. It inspired me to make people feel better about themselves, make them feel the boss actually knew my name. Yeah, he cares about me. That inspired me to keep doing that and more because I could see the positive impact it had on others.
Excellent. And admittedly, that sets up sort of this quote that I've been, I know the anticipation's been killing everyone with this quote. I keep wanting to preface in your book, but again, a quote that really resonates with me. A couple of things to unpack here from your book, Never Stop on a Hill. And I'll read this here. So too many people, albeit many of them capable and intelligent, are so focused on their careers, therefore making every decision with a view toward what is in it for them. Actually leading people is the least of their concerns. Their clawing and clamoring for promotion far outweighs their desire to build morale, support their people, and encourage them to be the best they can be. Much of that is a learned behavior, learned from piss poor leaders that they have watched succeed through tyranny, oppression, and backstabbing. So an absolute, eloquent quote, very, very self-explanatory. But a couple of things I would like to unpack here. Now, to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what this sort of is indicative to me is that, here we have people and, they may have had a supervisor or a mentor that, again, was just in it for themselves, not thinking about the other people in their own career pursuit. And now here we are just solely modeling ourselves after them. Is that more or less in line? I guess is where does this come perhaps from a personal story or?
For sure, a million of them, because I saw the best, I saw the worst. We all have. And every time I speak to a group, I say the same thing that was kind of a theme in the book, and that is, think about the best leader you ever had and what it was they did or said that made them a good leader, inspired you to be your best. Then think about the bad. What was it they did or said that made you want to quit? Or made you feel stupid or made you feel like you weren't good enough. And then do those things, positive things, don't do the negative things. Like learn from those people that are perfectly good, bad examples. And so in that, when I ask people and say, tell me about that person, Brian or Sue or Sally. And when it comes to the bad leaders, they'll say they didn't care about us. They cared about themselves. It was all about getting their next promotion. They didn't even know my name. They never said hi to me or good morning or ever, and on and on. They only cared about themselves. And that was a recurring theme very strongly in many, the vast majority of people that talked about bad leaders talked about them only caring about themselves. That's the worst, but it is a reality. And I bet you if you think right now about the worst supervisor you ever had, you will think about someone that didn't care about you. They cared about you.
Absolutely. And to that effect, and maybe to peel back the layers a little bit more here, because what I'm almost wondering, and I really want to get your take on this, because certainly this quote very indicative of what it stands for on its face. But, here we are in the 21st century, navigating a career prospectus has never been more confusing. There's LinkedIn and you have to post articles and this, that, and it can get very exhausting. So I'm almost wondering, do you feel that maybe the reason why, some people, let's say middle management, they're looking to climb the ladder or maybe to sidetrack with thinking about their next steps because maybe there's a lack of mentorship for them. There's nowhere maybe to put their mind at ease to say, here's what things are going to look like for you. Don't worry about that part of it. I have your back. Worry about, the people in your charge, so to speak. Do you think that's a big part of the equation?
For sure it is. And I think what many kind of people in leadership positions, but not necessarily leaders, miss is that if the team isn't successful, they're likely not going to be successful. Because if the team's going to meet the goals and the metrics and all the buzzwords of today in terms of prevention and making sure that the proper goals are being met going forward, they have to be engaged and they have to have trust and faith in you as their leader. And so if you're putting the boots to them all the time, they're not going to give a hoot whether or not your metrics are met that month. They're only going to care about making your life a living hell as a leader because that's what you've done to them. And so if you want them to be successful, then that should be your goal for the betterment of the community you serve or the client if you're not in policing, but the community is the client for the public safety world. If it's not about protecting the public, followed by what's best for your officers, and then lastly, what's best for you, then you're not a leader. If you got that in reverse order and don't really care about the public or the people you lead, get out of leadership, you find another job, go pump ice cream at Dairy Queen in the cones and ask people if they want it, because you should not be in the leadership role. You're not helping anybody.
Absolutely.
Do you think I have strong feelings about this?
Yeah. Listen, that's the reason I was all too happy that you obliged to sit down. Because again, I will tell you your name unto itself, synonymous with leadership. So absolutely a pleasure to sit down. Now, to that effect, I want to shift gears a little bit. And I was prefacing before we even hit the record button here. It is perhaps a little bit coincidental, maybe even somber that we find ourselves, sitting here today. It was 11 years ago to the date that unfortunately Vu Pham, an OPP officer, tragically killed in the line of duty, taken much too soon from us. Can you tell us quickly the story about Vu Pham, and then maybe we can talk about some lessons learned from this from a leadership standpoint?
For sure. Vu Pham, I didn't know personally, but I always say I wish I did, because everyone that knew Vu Pham thought the world of him. And often when people are deceased, others will say, "Oh, he was a good guy," but they didn't really like them. We've all experienced that. But Vu Pham was loved. Three wonderful boys, a wonderful wife, Heather. Worked in a small town in the Wingham, the Huron County detachment in Ontario. And him and his partner were in two separate cars on the lookout for a 78-year-old man that was mad at his wife. And she was kind of afraid of him, but they checked and found out all his guns were still locked in his house. He was on the loose in his pickup truck. They didn't even have authority to arrest him. They wanted to talk to him and make sure that, he's not going to be hurting his wife who had left him. And when Vu stopped him, he came out of a truck with a rifle that no one even knew he had, and he shot Vu. And his partner, Del Mercy, subsequently got in a gunfight with the guy and shot and killed him. But in the meantime, Vu was flown to London from the Wingham area and died in the hospital. And Commissioner Fantino and I were there. I was deputy at the time. We hightailed it to London. We got there around the same time the chopper got there with Vu, and we were there when he died. And it was really, it was, I've seen police officers killed. I've investigated the death of police officers. I've had officers killed when I was present. But all of that was awful. But Vu affected me more from a leadership perspective, because I really saw a broken detachment, a broken region that was devastated, that this young immigrant from Vietnam, whose parents sent him to Canada in the middle of the war as a baby, really, to give him a happy life, and had a wonderful life from that point on, subsequently died over this stupid situation. And really trying to lead the people through it, maintain my own sense of sanity, being there for the family, helping the coworkers, just sitting around the detachment in the days to follow, just talking to people and just trying to do what I could to support them, as did Commissioner Fantino very well, and many other leaders in the region. That one really hit me hard. And I mean, I've cried at funerals. I've been teary-eyed at many funerals, and for people I didn't know. But when I left Vu Pham's funeral, I sat on the side of the road and I parked the car and I bawled my eyes out. Like I just had almost like a breakdown, because it was just so impactful to see how much this just hurt an organization and required strong leadership, not from me, but from everybody, detachment, region, the deputies, the commissioner, and on, to try and help get everybody through that. And I wrote an article on it after, and I even put it in the piece of it that was in the Toronto Sun. I put it in the book, and it really, I talk about the impact it had on me, the region, everybody. But that was really, it was about leadership. It wasn't about saying, "Oh, look at me, I cried because an officer got killed." I mean, one police chief who should remain nameless in Ontario told me, "You really put yourself out there when you said you cried." Well, yeah, I guess I did. You know what? I guess I'm a lucky baby. I cried because a father, three beautiful little boys, and a husband, and a great cop got killed. So I guess I'm a sucky baby, but so be it. That's
of course. I'll tell you, I remember, that incident, and much like many people who, were cognizant of policing, or really just the news of the day. And I know that obviously, very, very much shook up the police world. So it goes without saying that obviously it would make anyone upset. But, you bring up an interesting point here, because, certainly there's a sentiment, if you will, that, a crisis will truly show the true testament of a leader, or leadership will rise to the occasion. So, if anything, I'm almost wondering, not even necessarily what lessons you may have learned from a leadership standpoint, but that human element. I mean, this type incident would make anyone upset, make anyone cry. Do you feel that it was almost important for your fellow officers to see that human element as well, and that you were there, basically, obviously very, very rattled by it as well? I mean, what's your standpoint on that?
Yeah, I think it did help them. I mean, and that was the point of the letter I wrote and sent out to everybody and got in the Toronto Sun, was really about, I'm hurting too. It was about them, and I know you're hurting because I am too. My message was, you're not alone. It's not like we're sitting in this ivory tower and oblivious to all the hell that you've gone through. And you know, I talked about the pride I had in them, and the folks that just rose the occasion to help, and all of that teamwork. But you know, the fact that I cried, I wasn't trying to get any benefit from that. I was just being honest. But I think some that helped them, if they didn't know that I was kind of open and honest, that kind of helped send that message. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was to try and
Of course.
support and show them I'm with you. You know what? This is an awful thing, the worst yet. But anyway, it was a tough time. But yeah, 11 years ago today, and I'm still in touch with Vu's wife Heather. Still get pictures of the boys, and you know, they're two are done high school, one's finishing university, and I mean, they're just a remarkable family. So yeah, it was a real tough one, that one.
Yeah, no, that definitely shook the policing community beyond that. That's for certain one of those ones that stands out. Just a peculiar incident, if I can word it that way, and certainly a tragic one. But we still think about Vu, obviously, to this day. With that being said, and again, you know, you've been so very gracious with your time here, and you know, I certainly have enjoyed my time. Maybe the interest of finishing up here on a question that is everyone's favorite question, one that I know I've been posed late, and I'm guilty of posing it as well, but maybe I'll pose it in a different way. And we've probably all heard the sentiment for those who are looking to rise to the occasion, looking to grow personally, professionally. You know, what courses, classes, certificates, you know, certainly there's no magic pill for those wanting to, climb the next rung in their ladder, take more responsibility, things of that nature. But, you know, perhaps if I could word it in any sort of insight or advice, closing remarks, I mean, things that aspiring leaders or maybe even people who are, you know, sort of new to the arena that they should be cognizant about, or to that effect, recommendations for any sort of, you know, formal study of the world that is leadership.
No, I think just being a leader, knowing what leadership truly is and the impact it has on people and on morale, and when morale's bad, people go bad, and the teams aren't going to produce, and professionalism is going to go down the hole. And but really understanding leadership, understanding people, and then practicing it, caring about people, supporting them, giving them that kick when they need a kick. And some of the best leaders I worked for give me a kick when I needed it, but they were there for me when I needed it too. And I think practicing all of that, you're going to be successful. You're going to have an impact on people. If that doesn't help you get promoted, then the processes are failing. At the same time, I'm a high school grad from Northern Ontario. I did not finish my degree. I might finish it someday. I've got a number of credits, but I never did have the degree. I may be the last police leader of any major department in North America to not have a degree. But you know, the people skills and my just working and trying to do my best, I lucked out, you know, because you could be the greatest in the world and never get promoted, or you could be like me, kind of try your best and still screw up and get promoted. So I think it's just being honest and trying your best to be there for people. And if you don't get promoted, you'll retire someday knowing that you did your best, and that people like seeing you walk in the room and they take a bullet for you because they know you took one for them. And so I think there's a lot of gratification in that, whether or not you have the stripes or the chevrons on your shoulders. It's just about leadership.
Absolutely. Words to live by. Well, I tell you what, absolutely a pleasure. I thank you so very kindly for being here. And for everyone out there watching, I thank you so very kindly for tuning in. And we will see you all on the next episode of Calling All Leaders.